Welcome to the FCPA training series from Corporate Compliance Insights featuring CCI founder Maurice Gilbert and Tom Fox of Tom Fox Law. Tom has practiced law for 25 years and is now assisting companies with FCPA compliance, risk management, and international transactions. Tom writes and speaks around the world on a variety of topics ranging from FCPA compliance, indemnities, and other forms of risk management. The videos in this series provide an introduction to FCPA compliance for legal, compliance, and operations personnel. Please note, the information should not be considered all-inclusive, and we encourage viewers to seek professional advice prior to implementing any compliance program. So let's get started.
Hi, I'm Maurice Gilbert with Corporate Compliance Insights, and joining me in the studio today is Tom Fox of Tom Fox Law. Today, our discussion is the SEC and DOJ, why they both enforce the FCPA Act. Tom, we know that the FCPA has two parts. Can you break this down for our viewers, please?
One of the real anomalies of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, or the FCPA, is that it's enforced by two U.S. government agencies, the Department of Justice and the Securities and Exchange Commission. The reason there are two agencies enforcing this law is the law is basically broken down into two parts. The first part is the thou shalt not bribe part. That's a criminal offense. The Department of Justice enforces that. But there's a second part which reads generally, if thou does bribe, thou must record it in your books and records as a bribe, which of course no one does. That's called a books and records violation, and the Securities and Exchange Commission enforces that. The Securities and Exchange Commission does not bring criminal charges. It would be a civil violation for a books and records violation. The further reason for the dichotomy was that the author of the bill, Stanley Sporkin, understood that while bribery and corruption may be difficult to root out, a books and records violation generally is more easy because there has to be some paper trail. So we have these two separate focuses of the act. We have two separate agencies enforcing it, which can bring up the situation where you have two government agencies investigating one company and two sets of penalties. That's one of the reasons we see the penalties in this area of FCPA enforcement be quite high, because you have separate and different penalties under both the Department of Justice enforcement and the SEC enforcement.
How does the Department of Justice go about enforcing the FCPA?
Well, as I mentioned, the department focuses on the criminal part, thou shalt not bribe. It's quite a high financial penalty for each bribe that a company or an individual may engage in. So for a company, it could be $2 million per bribe. For an individual, $250,000. For an individual, you can look at prison time of up to 5 years per bribe paid. And remember, you rarely or almost never have just one bribe. There's usually more involved. But there are other penalties that the Department of Justice can bring to bear, particularly in the area of individual personal enforcement. They can actually come and take all of the assets through asset forfeiture of an individual if they engage in bribery and corruption under the FCPA. For a corporation, they can be debarred from doing business with the United States government. They can lose their export control privileges. They can't export goods out of the country. These can be quite devastating to a business. So there's a wide variety of criminal penalties that the Department of Justice can bring to bear for FCPA enforcement.
In contrast, how about the Securities and Exchange Commission? What is their role in enforcing the FCPA?
Well, the Securities and Exchange Commission, as I mentioned, does not enforce a criminal part of the FCPA. So they cannot send an individual or a company to jail, but they can bring significant financial penalties. I believe that an individual can be liable for up to $500,000. They can be barred from doing business in the securities industry. But within enforcement against companies, what the SEC brings, separate and apart from the Department of Justice, is profit disgorgement. Profit disgorgement means any profits that a company receives as the fruit of its bribery and corruption can be remitted to the government as part of an overall fine and penalty. There can be a separate penalty for each books and records violation. So once again, you never have one bribe. That means you never have one books and records violation. So you have multiple penalties, both under both the Department of Justice and SEC, but the SEC adds and puts on top of that this profit disgorgement so that a company can have to give all their money back. Additionally, a company generally with the SEC will have to enter a cease and desist order where they promise not to violate the FCPA again. If they do so, they would be a recalcitrant FCPA violator or a serial FCPA violator and could be subjected to very much higher penalties the second time around. So even though the SEC enforces on the civil side only, they can bring significant penalties to bear.
Tom, thanks again for joining us today, and we look forward to your next presentation on FCPA compliance. Thanks for joining us today, and remember, before implementation of your own FCPA compliance program, you may wish to seek professional advice. Also, as a reminder, please visit us online at corporatecomplianceinsights.com.